Imagine a world where the government filed your taxes for you for free and was like, do they look right to you? And all you had to do was say yes. You could also say no if you want to. This is the way it's done in some European countries, like Denmark, Sweden, Spain, the United Kingdom. It's called Ready Return.
You hear stories about people in Europe where it's 5 minutes.
Jean Ross is a senior fellow at American Progress, an independent, nonpartisan policy institute. She once helped test Ready Return in California as executive director of the California Budget Project. We have a unique system in the U.S. We use private companies to file our taxes.
There's a community of people who have worked on this issue who are very passionate because it is a common sense thing. It's like you go online, to renew your driver's license. You don't have to go through a private software company. It seems like this is something that even in a divided country, we ought to be able to agree that it ought to be easy, it ought to be free, it ought to be as simple as possible.
This is Daniel Chaveiro. He's one of the nation's leading legal scholars on tax policy.
This is just the time of year when people are thinking about that source of unhappiness. You're worrying about your tax return. God, do I have to do it myself? How much of the accountant going to want? If I do it on TurboTax, do I know what's happening?
This is not a fun time of the year for anyone.
It's disgusting.
I should be able to figure this stuff out. And it's difficult. I spend a lot of time.
People have been complaining about our tax filing system for a while, and it hasn't gotten much better. In 2021, the IRS found that on average, it takes Americans 13 hours to prepare taxes and costs about $240.
They already have all that information. When you file your taxes now, they run your tax return against all that information they're getting from your employer, they're getting from your bank.
The government knows how much taxes we owe, so why can't they file them for us? To understand why we don't have a ready return system, we have to look at the lobbying against public options for filing. This really ramped up in 2002.
Well, it's very hip to be on the internet right now.
Websites were already a thing.
Every business, no matter how large, and no matter how small, will be on the internet in the year 2000.
The Bush administration had all sorts of e-initiatives, and one of them was wanting to create a system for Americans to file their taxes online. A public option for tax filing would mean going through the government to file, like a website created by the IRS.
The Bush administration, like the Clinton administration before it, believed in a public option for online filing.
If the government made it easier for people to file, then that could cut out their business. It's hard to sell something if it's being given away for free.
The private tax prep software companies had been helping Americans with taxes since the 80s, and Jean Ross says they wanted to be the ones to build the free file site, not leave it to the government. They certainly didn't want a ready file option. If the government did your taxes for you, you wouldn't need to pay for a service.
So it really was an incredibly intense effort to block a public system. It was a lobbying push like few I've ever seen, having been involved with public policy for a number of decades. I've never seen a blitz quite like this.
The government said, fine, you can build the software for online filing, but it has to be free to a portion of low-income Americans. If you do that, we won't make our own online filing site to compete with you. It was called
It's a Free File. Let me get the exact. The Free File Alliance, which is that agreement between the Internal Revenue Service and the industry.
By keeping the tax system in the private industry's hands, the Ready Return system, which is also a public filing program, couldn't become a reality.
There's sort of a subplot to this story.
And it begins with an investigation by ProPublica, a nonprofit media outlet which published a series of articles beginning in 2019 about the free file system and alleged abuses by some of the biggest companies in the tax prep industry. The reporting was followed by an investigation by the New York State Department of Financial Services, who accused TurboTax, H&R Block, and other tax prep companies of, quote, unfair and abusive practices.
They made it news, and so that was I think that transformed, at least temporarily, the environment a little bit.
TurboTax, which is owned by Intuit, didn't respond to a request for comment, but it released a statement to news media in 2019 that said, We stand behind our actions as being both appropriate and consistent with our values. Any suggestion that Intuit does not support the IRS Free File program is flat wrong. H&R Block responded but declined to give a statement. In 2019, it told news media, "It is proud to have helped millions of Americans with our 4 free tax filing options, including the IRS Free File program, our free online product, our My Free Taxes partnership with the United Way, and our partnership with Military One Source."
It's interesting because in many ways it's a case study of, what oftentimes doesn't work in our political system. But it could be a story about what does work as well.
What did work was the Ready Return system. Back in 2006, California tested it.
The state's tax agency initially took about 50,000 taxpayers, sent them a return with all of the information filled in, said, if you agree, sign it and return it. People loved it. They actually did an evaluation afterwards. Things that you wouldn't believe would ever be said about a tax agency. I can't believe you actually cared. You're making my life easy. And then when they tried to scale up that program, again, the industry, same tactics.
After the reporting from ProPublica and TurboTax came out, H&R Block and TurboTax left the agreement. Does this mean we have the opportunity to make filing simpler for the average American?
You can't just sit down and say, wouldn't it be a good idea to make filing simpler for the average American? I think probably everybody would agree to that in the abstract, but there's no political energy behind it, and you can't get things through Congress unless there is political energy.
This is David Rosenblum. He worked as the director of the Office of International Tax Affairs in the U.S. Department of the Treasury. He's right. It would take a few things, like political energy, funding, and legislation to get Ready File to become a reality. There has been political energy, though. 2 major software companies leaving the agreement is a big deal. For example, Elizabeth Warren introduced a Tax Simplification Act in 2016 and reintroduced it in 2019 after ProPublica's reporting came out. Warren's plan would allow eligible taxpayers with simple tax situations to choose a new return-free option, which provides a pre-prepared tax return with income tax liability or refund amount already calculated. But Warren's bill never even got a vote.
I'm an optimist, but I actually think there is a moment now to do something. Part of it is this comprehensive effort to modernize the technology of the IRS.
They've had a long struggle to update their computer system, which supposedly was on Fortran, which is a computer language from the 1980s until fairly recently.
In order to build an online system, the IRS would need funding. It's been severely defunded over the years. But finally, it's getting some attention. What Gene is referencing is that the Biden administration has proposed to fund the IRS as part of the Build Back Better plan. Under the plan released by the House Rules Committee, the IRS would receive nearly $5 billion to continue its IT modernization.
I think it creates an opening to set up a system like Ready File.
It needs one more push. There would have to be legislation that directs the IRS to build a Ready Return file site.
It's not that hard to do. They used to say, if we can put a man on the moon, we can do this.
We put people on the moon decades ago. We can figure out a way to have people pay their taxes online.